So what is Blockpass doing, or what is the next session about? I mean, there's one very, very key, big promise of a blockchain, right? And this is related to identity management. That you, as a consumer, as a user
Thank you.
of a blockchain,
Oh, excuse me.
you are owning your data.
Video
right?
is the second slide.
You have
Does that work?
The
video?
sovereignty.
I think so.
And Blockpass
you have to start it with.
Okay.
is a startup which exactly deals with this self-sovereignty in identity management. And what I learned from Hans in a short talk was you originally started with devices, right? And identifying devices, and then you moved over to human beings, right? And self-sovereign identity management. I'm really curious to know from you, Conor, how this goes with Blockpass. So I pass over to you now.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me? It's okay? Okay, there we go. All right, so Blockpass, Blockpass came from a lot of different places, but right now it's focused on developing self-sovereign identity for humans. So I'll go through this a little bit quick, but first thing, we have a video. Hopefully it will play. Nope. Okay, maybe not. Okay, so we'll skip the video for now. All right, so Blockpass's immediate focus is shared KYC and AML compliance, so that's know your customer, and also anti-money laundering. So this is initially targeted at the blockchain ecosystem, also fintech startups in the traditional industry, as well as government organizations. So this is just our initial focus because there's a huge need for compliance and I suppose steps to make the entire blockchain space more open to regulation, or at least more in line with it. Don't want to regulate it too much, obviously, but there has to be at least some regulation. So the story I think is interesting, and it gives a lot more context as to like why we think this is important and why our approach is a little bit different than a lot of the other identity companies, is that we actually started as a DAU, decentralized autonomous utility, for solar specifically. So Blockpass is a joint venture between Chain of Things and our partner, Infinity Blockchain Labs. I'm from the Chain of Things side, and so at Chain of Things for the last 3 years we've been studying how blockchain can potentially support Internet of Things, mainly to solve two major problems with security and interoperability. Our conclusion to this point is that device identity from birth that goes deeper than an IMEI number or MAC address, that is basically a metadata manifest of all of the information relating to what goes inside a device at its birth. We believe that this is at least, given what current technology enables, the key that blockchain has for IoT connected devices, and frankly all objects in general. So this allows specifically ownership of the device. It's all about ownership and control of the device, the data that it creates, the actuations that it's capable of, and then also the ability to permission devices to other individuals. And it's really about the human being at the center of it. So the identity profiles that we look at right now are human identity, company identity, object identity, and device identity. And so object we won't talk as much about in this presentation, but yeah, I mean, object can be anything from a very, very simple thing to even a digital asset to a plot of land. So creating the, I guess, the connection between these four different identities is what is important to make DAOs work. So what basically happened is we hit a roadblock with this solar DAO, and we decided to pause it. The main point is that the concept of a blockchain-based device identity is somewhat new. So instead of trying to make a quick fix, we decided to pause entirely and make a whole new company, a whole new platform that supports the connection of all of these identity profiles. Because that would not only solve the problem that we had, but it would allow others to build all sorts of different applications on top of that. But first, compliance. And I'll run through this a little quickly because I know everyone at least understands the pains of compliance, especially if you're here for a blockchain conference. So mainly it takes time, it costs a lot. It's redundant to a large extent, and then you're sitting on this huge pile of data that you might not want. So let's see. Additionally, all these companies are going to have to comply to some extent to money laundering and anti-terrorist funding. So ICOs, obviously, a lot of companies early on in the ICO days have raised huge amounts of money with doing little more than collecting an email address and a phone number. This becomes a little problematic as many have been potentially used as giant money laundering vehicles. So the self-sovereign identity angle, so how it works with Blockpass is we're aiming for a goal of holding none of the data ourselves. So initially we want to create like the mechanism that allows an individual to create their identity, have it verified, and then be able to interact with a lot of these different applications that can be built onto it. So in many ways it's the inverse of Facebook or Google model where you give up all of your data and then it's used in the background for uses that many people don't know. So I'll explain in a quick nutshell how Blockpass actually works. You simply submit your data through the application. It's verified by regulated top shelf KYC, I guess background check verification companies. If your identity packet is verified as like a clean person, the only thing that goes on chain is that a hash of that data packet. So we take a hash, and that hash representation of a verified identity is what goes on a public blockchain on the whitelist. So that means nothing. Like you can't reverse that back into the original data. There's no personal data stored. We don't keep any of the data ourselves. We actually destroy it. It's all pushed back to the user's phone. So it just lives on your phone. And then when you go interact with merchants, you simply scan a QR code. Then you're asked if you will allow permission for the merchant to access your information. No different than if you were to download an app, and the app asks if it can use your camera and your contact list and like have access to all these things. It's the same thing, it just puts the power back in your hands. Once you've done so, the information is passed over to the merchant, and then you're able to move forward much more quickly. The merchant pays a fraction of the price they normally would, and it takes no time compared to submitting all your information again to another verifier. So, yeah, so naturally the business benefit, rapid user onboarding, so you don't have to wait a couple weeks for all the data to be verified. Low cost, pre-verified compliance, it's much cheaper. And new applications, and that's actually where I'm most interested, the new applications you can build on this. It removes a lot of the tedium and the expense required with this, not to mention the sensitivity of the data being out there. I spoke about many of these earlier. It basically, okay, so current process, we're based in Hong Kong, also London, we're funded. So Blockpass, the app has been in development for 9 months. It actually just launched last week in London. We'll be going to a number of other places for subsequent launches in Tokyo and Hong Kong the next few days. Our targets are pretty obvious, but we will be expanding to, I guess my role is special projects. I'm focusing on all the future applications that kind of got us here in the first place. So once we have the human side down well and cornered, we'll start working on all the different things that we could do with this, including specifically like decentralized autonomous utilities. They're just kind of like endless applications once these first blocks, are put into place. Here's a closer example of the solar utility. Also, shipping and logistics by using identity profiles of different things, including dumb objects, which you can't put a tracking device in, but you can track them once they're inside of smart buckets. So this is another application that, I mean, we can go into these all day long, but yeah, that's about it. Oh, the other thing this might have actually just been announced today, or will be in the next couple of days, but we formed a partnership with Edinburgh Napier University, where we'll be funding a lab to develop work on zero knowledge proofs. specifically for identity use over the next 3 years. And so without getting into it, zero-knowledge proofs are a way that you could create like an almost completely perfect self-sovereign identity platform. So yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Take questions from the audience now. You really made it. That's great. I'm so scared that we're running out of time. Any questions to Conor?
Two, actually. Number one, you're saying that the mobile device is going to store all of my identity data, so this is the single point of failure in your system. What's your suggestion on endpoint protection of devices? That's number one. Number two, zero-knowledge proof works technically. How do you deal with the regulators? Because that will lead to a totally anonymous identity platform, which the regulators in the financial services industry are never going to accept. So who's translating then the anonymous or pseudonymous transaction data into real names for the regulators? Thank you.
Okay, that's interesting. So to your first comment, yeah, I guess it's all ironic, right? Like, because even with cryptocurrency, it's like all decentralized, but then the one human that owns it is the soft center point that you can access it. Actually, a lot worse than a bank, maybe. So, yeah, I mean, with the phone, with it being in your possession, the thought there is like instead of Equifax having everything centralized, you hack into it and get 100 million identities in one go. You'd have to hack 100 million individual phones. So you might get 100, but it makes it a little bit more difficult. In terms of zero-knowledge proof, that's actually very fascinating. I would want to sit down and like talk to you more about that specifically. I don't think because all this new GDPR stuff is actually quite interesting in how it relates to that. But yeah, maybe we could talk about that later. I don't have like the right answer for you immediately on that. So.
Any more questions?
What's preventing me from making 5 identities on my phone? Can I make it? Check.
Test. What's preventing me from making 2, 3, 4, or 5 different identities on one phone, or just get a bunch of different phones and then I can, trade with myself and build up my reputation that it's just me with different phones, etc., etc.
Yeah, I guess because every time you do it, you'd have to use the same data that you originally did. I mean, unless you have addresses and houses and different names all over, I suppose there's always a way to kind of get around it. I mean, that's a question that does keep coming up, and I guess is one of a few issues with pure self-sovereign identity, because it's like if we're not putting ourselves as a third party in there that's watching everything, right? Like then who is? So. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. Not be able to prevent everyone from doing that, but to sign up for multiple services, you would have to submit all of your, you'd have to get multiple passports. You'd have to kind of go through some trouble to do that. And then still go through on FIDO or top shelf identity verification companies to push your fake passport through, or multiple passports. So, but that is a good, yeah.
Why not using DNA as a hash,
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there are many very interesting other forms of proof of identity. We've even
coupled to your system. I mean, you start with DNA and then you go to Blockpass.
Oh, you mean you submit your DNA? This would also be like an identity verification, with 23andMe or something? Yeah. Maybe that would come in subsequent versions. That's very interesting. Of course. Yeah.
Take one more question from the lady.
You mentioned that you share the data with whoever wants to receive the data, or that it's me. Is there also logic behind it that you just say share parts of data, or just the proof that you say I'm above 18 or something like that, so that it's not really the information which is proven, but sort of the data range? Right.
Totally. Yeah. When you go to I guess verify through a regulated, I don't know, merchant or whatever, based on what the merchant's requirements are, when you scan that QR code, when you log into WhatsApp, it will ask, it will be this merchant requires these levels of data. It won't ask for everything, and you can also decide to decline